walked into the classroom, demanding to know what all the fuss was about. To everyone's surprise, the bully instantly dropped into his seat and acted as if nothing had happened. The teacher looked around and noticed the class president standing, clearly angry. He asked her what was going on and why she was out of her seat. However, the girl didn't spill the truth. Instead, she quickly returned to her seat and assured him it wasn't anything worth mentioning. The teacher didn't press further, but for some reason he told the girl to meet him after class. Something that the girl got curious to know why. When the school day ended, she met him as instructed, and it turned out he wanted a favor. Since she was the class president and someone he could trust, he asked her to check on Lee Ho, who had been absent that day and wasn't answering his phone. In exchange, the teacher promised to write her a recommendation letter for her senior year. It was framed as a request, but the girl knew she couldn't exactly say no. Reluctantly, she agreed. Before long, she found herself standing in front of Lee's house, looking completely uninterested in whatever situation he might be in. Wanting to get this over with as quickly as possible, she didn't waste any time. She walked up to the door and knocked, calling out to see if anyone was home. When no one responded, she hesitated for a moment before deciding to check if the door was locked. Turning the doorknob, she realized it wasn't. To her surprise, the door wasn't locked, so she slowly stepped inside the house. The moment she walked in, she froze in shock. Right there, in front of her, was Lee's lifeless-looking body, surrounded by a filthy room where bugs seemed to be playing hide-and-seek. Lee's appearance was horrifying. His eyes had rolled back completely white, and his mouth was wide open. The sight made the girl scream in terror, thinking Lee was dead. Without wasting another second, she grabbed her phone and called for an ambulance. The paramedics arrived quickly and rushed Lee to the nearest hospital. It didn't take long for the doctors to figure out what had happened. Lee had probably fainted from pure starvation, abandoned by God Mu, who had left his body earlier. He was hospitalized and hooked up to a nutrient IV to stabilize him. Just then, something strange happened. As Lee's body lay still, it suddenly twitched. In an instant, Mu returned to Lee's body. The moment Mu opened his eyes, he was completely disoriented. The place didn't look familiar at all. Confused, he tried to figure out where he was and how he'd ended up there. Before he could make sense of anything, he felt something odd. Looking down, he realized something was attached to his hand. It was the fourth line delivering the nutrient serum. As a god who had lived only for battle and fighting, Mu had no knowledge of human tools or technology in this era, and this strange serum was no exception. He stared at it with a mix of curiosity and unease, trying to process what was happening. Even though he didn't understand what the serum was, God Mu immediately figured out that it was sending something into his body, and only through his vessels. With his godly knowledge of what was happening inside him, it didn't take long for him to realize it was nutrients. He could sense his body absorbing them rapidly, speeding up his recovery. To Mu, it felt like some kind of healing magic, though he knew very well it wasn't magic. As Lee started moving his head around, regaining consciousness, the girl sitting nearby finally noticed he was awake. However, the creepy smile on his face made her think he was a little crazy. Still, she asked if Lee knew what had happened to him that caused him to faint. Not waiting for an answer, she grabbed her bag, stood up, and announced she was heading back to school to report everything to the teacher, as he had asked her to. Mu quickly sat up and tried to stop her. He didn't know who this girl was exactly, but he assumed she was the one who had helped him recover so quickly. However, even after realizing that, he didn't thank her. Instead, in typical Mu fashion, he asked for something else entirely. The girl was in a hurry to leave, but Mu was eager to gather more information about Earth and how people lived here. Pulling the serum out of his hand, he gave his usual creepy smile and asked if she knew a place where he could train to get stronger. The girl turned her head slightly and gave him a side glance. Honestly, in her eyes, this boy looked like anything but an athlete. Add to that the poor, dirty condition of his house. It didn't exactly show if he really cares about sports. Still, after a moment of thought, she suggested a specific place for him. It wasn't anything fancy, just an outdoor gym at a nearby park, with some simple workout equipment. Not wasting any time, Mu made his way to the park and began his training. He quickly started doing pull-ups on the bars, pushing his body as hard as he could. When he finally grew tired, he dropped to the ground to take a break, sweat dripping off his body. As he looked around, Mu couldn't help but feel impressed. To him, these simple pieces of exercise equipment looked like professional training tools. It had been almost 4,000 years since he'd last set foot on Earth, and after that, he hadn't bothered to check on human progress as the Earth God. Seeing even these basic workout machines left him in awe. Back in his time, humans trained with something entirely different, primitive methods that were far harder and less efficient. This modern equipment, though simple by human standards, was revolutionary in Mu's eyes. Mu started randomly testing each piece of equipment, even though he had no idea how any of them actually worked. Suddenly, in the middle of his training, something small, like a pebble, hit him on the back and fell to the ground. To his surprise, it was the beaten-up bully from earlier, and this time he had brought someone along, a boxer named Hyung, to fight him. Even with the boxer beside him, the bully acted like a barking dog, yelling insults at Lee from a safe distance but not daring to step closer. Mu couldn't care less about his barking. Calmly, he sat down, picked up the rock, and asked who had thrown it. The beaten-up guy, feeling a little braver now that Hyung was there to back him up, shouted that he was the one who did it. He started ranting about how Lee would pay for hurting him, bragging about how Hyung, his cousin and a professional boxer, was going to beat him to death. But before he could finish explaining, Mu saw an opening and caught him off guard with a sudden punch. The guy hit the ground, screaming in pain as his already broken nose got smashed again. This was the result of starting a fight with God Mu by throwing a stone, and of course, Mu couldn't have been happier about it. That was on Earth, but in the realm of the gods, things were a bit more complicated. The time for the usual meeting of the gods had arrived, but Mu was nowhere to be seen. As his only assistant, the Dragonling had to attend the meeting in his place. With his lord absent, the nervous little dragon stuttered as he awkwardly began to deliver Mu's message. Before the Dragonling could even get through the first few words of the letter, Lucifer suddenly interrupted. Glaring at the dragon, he demanded to know why a mere assistant dared to step into a meeting meant for gods, let alone speak first, as if he were someone important. Lucifer's intimidating demeanor scared the poor Dragonling out of his wits. Panicked, the dragon quickly clarified that he was only there to deliver a message from God Mu and had no intention of disrespecting or offending anyone with his presence. Determined to fulfill his duty and